Hi, hi everyone. This is Winning Live Online with me, Pastor Debbie. So glad to have you join me. It's Tuesday night, yay! Probably one of my favorite nights of the week, and really looking forward to doing an amazing session with you. I hope you've had a fabulous week. It's so good to see the sun at last. I was beginning to think that we would never hit spring, but hooray, I think we have. And just waiting for guys to jump on. And just really looking forward. Tonight we're going to be doing an interesting one. It's called Stretch or Snap. And it reminds me of when I was still teaching and we used to get those rulers. Hey, Len, plastic ruler, but you could twist it and it would never snap because it was flexible. I don't know if any of you remember those rulers. But when I was putting together, hey, King and Queen, when I was putting together tonight's message, I just remembered those rulers, and we would have such fun just bending them and into all these different shapes, and they would never ever break. But tonight we're going to be looking at stretch or snap in a good way. We're not going to be talking about rulers. Those of you who were with me last week I mentioned that I was starting chemo. Hey, Trace. So I had my first chemo session, 5 hours on Wednesday. And it's in the new oncology ward. Hey, Carla. It's in the new oncology ward at Vincent Pallotti. And it's, they've really catered for every aspect of a tough treatment, but they've made it as comfortable as possible. We've got a panoramic view of the mountain. There's space for 24 chairs, so 24 patients can have treatment at any one time. They've got free tea, coffee, biscuits for family who want to stay for the however long you're having your chemo. There's a coffee bar. There's a coffee bar where guys can work, people who are coming to sit with you. It's just really state of the art compared to the previous oncology ward that I went to that was just 11 chairs, very old fashioned, very cramped. So it's amazing how an environment can make something that you're going through a little less difficult and less stressful. Thank you so much to those of you who've been praying for me. The first 5 days are really rough, and then you kind of start recovering. And just as you're getting on the top of your mountain, you have the next chemo session. So it's chemo, 5 days, not great. And then you build up because each session is 3 weeks. So I'm going to be on a Tuesday night for sessions that don't coincide with my treatment. Soon I'll be having another new hairstyle. We've gone from like a curly bob to the short, and it's going to get even shorter. But hey, let's not be boring and predictable. So good to have you, Ronica. Good to have you online. I'm doing things in a different space tonight. We have a family dinner. It's my mom's birthday today. And so John, my husband, is cooking up a storm. So I've been moved to another spot so that we don't hear things like John tearing off tinfoil in the background, which a lot of you are used to hearing. We thought we'd just kind of go with a little bit more privacy tonight. Hope you've had an awesome week. Remember, if you're new on this platform, my name is Debbie Sloan, and I'm the lead pastor of a fabulous church in Kenilworth, A City Church. Love you to come and visit us. We are a church for everyone. Come as you are, where no one is perfect, but absolutely anything is possible. Again, if something that I say resonates with where you're at, just give me an emoji, then I know, hey, this is working for someone. It's hit that spot. Share. It's always great to have you share. I think just the nature of what we're doing, winning, it's keys to living a winning lifestyle, super practical. And I think there's always someone, if it's not you, who can pick something up from what we do each session. And that's really my passion, is to see believers not kind of just hanging around waiting for Jesus to return, but believers who are actually making a difference in your communities. And in order to do that, we know how to live our lives out practically as believers. And so winning is a step in helping to facilitate that. How do we practically live out our walk with Jesus so that we are lifting lives and connecting people to Jesus? So I hope you've got something to make a note, that one thing that you maybe need to pick up from tonight's session, that one thing that you can maybe apply. Remember, as I always say, switch off whatever's happened in the day, whatever you need to do after this. I don't know if you've locked yourself in the bathroom to get a private space from the kids, but wherever you find yourself, this is our time. So for the next 20-25 minutes, just focus on this so that you benefit from what we're going to do tonight. Okay, so let's jump in. I read a statement recently, and it's really powerful for where I am in my own space, and it's adversity isn't always the enemy. You know, no one sort of welcomes adversity. It's not something you say, yay, I've hit adversity. But there's so often when we hit adversity is when we grow the most, because it's kind of in those times that you need to dig deep and really discover what you are and what you're all about in Christ when you face those tough times. It's a time where we get to know Jesus in a different way, because adversity will often put that pressure on and move us from a space of maybe complacency to a space where I'm really needing Jesus to pull me through this. And so I want to kind of set that statement as the premise for tonight. Adversity isn't always the enemy. And let's look at David and Goliath. Love the story of David and Goliath. For those of you who aren't familiar with that story, David is a shepherd boy. He has been announced as the king of Israel to replace Saul. But at the stage of the story, he's not stepped into that position. His brothers are fighting a mammoth giant of a man called Goliath, and a whole army is completely terrified of this giant. David rocks up, and through a series of circumstances and events, he ends up facing this giant Goliath with 5 stones and 1 sling. And just to paraphrase, he's able to completely slay this giant of a man and actually cuts his head off, and he is the hero of the day. The point of the matter is that David's prep for meeting Goliath happened long before he met Goliath. You know, David had to stretch his capabilities, and in this case, he was brave. He was an excellent marksman. He was used to fighting any enemy. But he had to stretch his capabilities by defending a flock of sheep because he was a shepherd boy. And that's where he stretched his capabilities, was in protecting and defending sheep. So I'm just going to pick up 1 Samuel 17:34-37. And it just says, you know, David's actually speaking to King Saul, who is the king at the time of Goliath's attack. And, you know, Saul wants to put all this armory on to David. And David says, you know what, I'm just a shepherd. I've been tending my father's sheep. And if a lion or a bear came to carry off one of the sheep, I'd go after it, struck it and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When that predator turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. And then he goes on to say, if I can do a lion and a bear, I think I can do this giant. So his capabilities were stretched when he was pressurized having to protect his sheep. He was it. There was no one else to look after the sheep. So he had to dig deep, and he had to own skills and abilities which enabled him to be more than ready to slay that giant Goliath. And I love that story because it captures the essence of what I want to share with you tonight. We need to be ready before the stretch is required. You know, it's like we can't, when someone says we're going on holiday, you know, 2 minutes before we're going to jump in the car, start packing the bags. We need to be ready. And tonight is all about looking at we need to stretch and be ready because we don't know when the Lord's going to give us an assignment. And the word says that we need to be ready in and out of season. And it's not always God puts stuff in our path to do for him when it's our season, when we think it's convenient, when we think it's the best time. God will show up and give us a task to accomplish when he knows it's our best time. So our responsibility is to be stretched, in shape, and ready for action. Expansion is something we all need. You know, if you think about it, we want expansion in our effectiveness. We want to increase stamina. We want to increase memory. We want to increase our bank balance. The only thing we don't want to increase is our waistband, because that would not be a healthy increase. We often pray for more opportunities. God, use me. I'm here for you. I'll do whatever you ask me to do. And God wants to give us increase, but he wants us to keep the growth that we gain. You know, it would be such a waste if we kind of just ramp up for one thing to do for him and then we kind of just go back to kind of just parking. God wants us to not only keep the growth that we gain, but to keep on gaining growth. Because when we are able to be trusted with little, God will give us more and more and more. There's so much work for us to do in lifting lives and connecting people to Jesus. God doesn't want to just increase our lives in terms of increasing the opportunity. He wants us to be increased in our readiness. And that's where the capacity increase comes in. That's where the stretching comes in. Because when you stretch, you're ready. I mean, if I think of when I go on a run, I've got to stretch to be ready so that my muscles can handle the capacity regarding the output that I'm expecting them to do on the run. So David didn't just increase in muscle, power, and stamina over the years of looking after the flock. He grew in faith in God. So that by the time he met Goliath, he was ready physically, emotionally, and spiritually. He didn't, when he faced Goliath, it's like, oh my word, now I've got to start getting my act together. He was ready. Did he know that he was going to face a giant one day? I don't think so. But when we serve God, it's like, Lord, I know that what you're going to get me to do for you is bigger than me. And I need to be responsible and develop and build and grow as much as I'm able. And then the rest is up to you. God's not going to grow and develop us. He's not going to stretch us. And I'm going to look at tonight, what does it mean to stretch and grow and be developed so that God can increase our capacity? Whenever growth or expansion presents itself in our lives, it's gonna create expansion in terms of the level to which we use skill, the degree to which we have faith, the degree to which we have courage. I often think expansion stretches attitudes, it stretches perspectives, it stretches our belief system. It also stretches our willingness. But on the converse, on the flip side of that, I think it also exposes things that are maybe hidden. You know, when the pressure's on, hidden motives, hidden agendas will be exposed. If there's insecurity, if there's jealousy, if there's issues that we need to work out with God, when the pressure is on, those things are often brought to the surface. These things will come out based on the intensity of the increase. You know, I often think of, you really know what a person is like when you see how they function under pressure, when there's expansion, when there's increase in expectation. It's like, how is that person functioning? And that's where you really get to see what someone's like. So Jesus told his disciples to look within long before they went out into the mission field with him. He challenged their priorities. He rebuked their unbelief, and at times he even questioned their motives. You know, Matthew 9 verse 9, Jesus tells Matthew the tax collector to follow him. And Jesus constantly reminded the disciples, as he did in this case, your primary focus is to connect people to the gospel, and to live lives. And that at the end of the day is our primary motive. That needs to be our objective. You know, if you think about Noah built with increase in mind, didn't he? I mean, he was building the ark. He was told there's going to be a flood, but I don't think he could visualize it until it happened. But he was building with big in mind. He wasn't building thinking this is going to be a small thing. I don't think he fully grasped what God was going to do with the flood, but he knew that it was going to be big, and he built with big in mind. We need to do the same. You know, when we're preparing ourselves, which is part of our stretching, is being tight in the word. You know, you can't read the Bible once a week and expect to grow spiritually. You can't speak to God once every second week and expect to build a strong relationship. We need to do our due diligence in terms of your basic spiritual fundamentals. Reading the Bible daily, but not just reading it and forgetting what you're reading. It's reading and live it. It's pray first. It's, you know, presenting yourself to be used by God on a daily basis. It's saying to the Lord, I want to be a difference maker. I don't want to blend into society. I want to be someone who stands up for what it means to be a believer, not just to draw attention to me, but I want people to see you in me, Jesus. I want to reflect you. And you know, we got to stand and be counted. But in order to stand and be counted, we need to be stretching so that we're ready to stand and be counted, so that we're ready for what Jesus puts in our path. You know, when it started to rain, Noah was more than ready. He was ready in here. He was ready spiritually. He was ready physically. He was ready. And if you think about how did God use Noah? God used Noah and his family to really start a whole new race. He started a whole new mankind. What has God got in store for you? I don't know, but I know that it's big. And I know that it's bigger than you. And I know that it involves people. And I know that it involves connecting people to Jesus and lifting people's lives. And we've got so much work to do. So maybe a question is, where do you need to get in shape before the stretch? So don't wait until the door of opportunity arises and then you try and start getting ready. You know, you don't wait for the moment before you deal with your motive. Don't allow expansion to expose you. You know, let its pending arrival propel you forward into preparation and prayer. It's like, what do I mean by all of that? No one's born for mediocrity. You know, in the counseling space, it's so often people's self-worth and their value of self is so damaged by different things. And it's, you know, people reach a space where they just look at, what is the purpose of my life? I don't think I have a purpose. And that's so contrary to what God has designed for us. Every one of us was not designed for mediocrity in him. As believers, we're called to be contributors in extending his kingdom. And we need to live knowing that and live our lives accordingly. If I've called someone to be an ambassador for our nation, and an ambassador for a nation is someone who lives in a nation other than the nation of birth, and they've got to represent that nation in a foreign land effectively, precisely. They've got to be a good representation of what that nation is all about. We're ambassadors for the King. We need to be looking at, how can I influence? How can I make a stand for what's right? How can I extend God's kingdom? Who can I pray for? Who can I encourage? And it's living with an outward, expansive mindset where we are stretched and toned and ready for opportunity. Develop your skill. What skill set has God given you? And yes, we need to use our skill sets in the workspace, in the lecture theatre, but ultimately your skill set has been given to you so that you can use that to extend God's kingdom. What is your skill set and what are you doing with it to contribute to seeing people's lives being lifted and to seeing people being connected with Jesus? We need to build a strong, tight, real, alive, authentic relationship with Jesus, not some very static, stagnant, stereotypical religious connection with him. It's not about being religious with Jesus. It's about where he's the very air that you breathe. It's about praying first. It's about serving. It's about live right. It's about not compromising. You know, I look at an amazing guy years ago. He's one of our forefathers in terms of spreading the gospel in China, Hudson Taylor. And Hudson Taylor studied to be a doctor. He learned Mandarin. He did all of that to be stretched and ready so that he could see the expansion and the extension of the gospel in China. You know, we're not all necessarily going to learn Mandarin and become a doctor, but what are you doing with what you have so that when the opportunity comes, you're ready for it and you're in? Because those opportunities come when we're least expecting it. You know, I've said that an athlete will stretch and get ready so that they're able to perform, run further, put more pressure on their muscles. In years of experience in the counseling space, spiritually, the place where we snap is often where we've come to the end of our faith in our potential, our grace in our potential, the peace that we think we have that surpasses all understanding. And you know, sometimes we need to get to the end of ourselves so that we can start depending on God. You know, God's given us love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. But we can't exercise that in a human form. We've got to move into the supernatural. And that's where, Lord, stretch me to be able to do things like forgive more than is deserved, to love enemies unapologetically, to turn the other cheek. And we can only do that when we step from self into, Lord, I want to function in the capacity that you've given me. I don't know what that means. I don't know where that's going to take me, but I'm here. I'm available. Do with me what you want. That's a big prayer. But you know what? Who better to make that kind of offer to than to the one who made you, who's got your best interests at heart, who begins a good work in you and will see it through to completion, who wants to bless you because he wants to see you be a blessing to others as you draw off of the bountiful resources that he's deposited in your life. Who better to show up for in terms of volunteering my life? And so I want to identify places where you may snap and teach you instead to stretch. So I think sometimes we can snap in the area of forgiveness. You know, sometimes our forgiveness is conditional, and forgiveness in the Lord is unconditional. Forgiveness is never easy, but when we step from functioning in self to functioning surrendered in him, we stretch and tone and exercise that capacity to forgive, and we're able to forgive the unforgivable. I think in areas of selfishness and being self-focused, it's like when we get to that space where, Lord, this isn't about me. You know, I look at my cancer journey at the moment and it's like, Lord, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to recover from cancer. I don't know that. But what I do know is I've got life. And while I've got life, I'm going to live it. And I'm going to live it for you. Because that's God's call on my life. And so I want to be stretched and ready so that whatever you have for me to do, I'm ready to do that. Because it is, at the end of the day, it is all about him. You know, I look at it in the areas we snap is maybe in surrender and submission. You know, I want to be in control. I want to be in charge. And at the end of the day, we would like to think we're in control and we're in charge, but actually we're just oh so not. And so often when we try and take control, we just mess up because it's not our position. Our position is to surrender before the Lord and say, not my will, but your will be done. You have a great plan and purpose for my life. You've called me to greatness and not mediocrity. So I'm going to do it your way, which means being stretched and ready for action. So imagine if David and Goliath had not been stretched and ready. then I don't think we would have seen David as being Israel's greatest king. Noah wouldn't have been, and his family wouldn't have been the group of people from which a nation, the world, evolved. So what are we potentially stopping by not being stretched and ready? Because either we're stretched and ready or we snap. And so keep flexible, keep those fundamental basics in terms of your walk with the Lord strong and tight. And it's, Lord, what do you want me to do for you today? Whose life can I change today in some way? Because, you know, Jesus is going to return, and there are people who are so lost. We carry the key to unlock that lostness. We need to be ready. So I think my challenge to all of us tonight is, what area are you maybe not stretched and toned in? What one area do you need to tone up in? Maybe it's confidence. Maybe it's the way that you see yourself. Maybe you see yourself as insignificant and I'm just and then whatever you refer to yourself as being. No one is just anything in God's economy. God sees you the same way. When he looked at David, others just saw the shepherd boy. God saw the king. Don't let the world minimalize and trivialize the impact and significance that you are in the hand of Jesus. So maybe just kind of have just a bit of a reflection before you go to bed tonight. What do I need to stretch in? Maybe I need to stretch in being less self-focused in the area of forgiveness. Maybe I need to just back up and see myself the way that God sees me. Whatever it is, wake up tomorrow morning. It's a new day full of new opportunities. Lord, where are we going to go today? So I know I'm going to be waking up like that tomorrow morning. And I can't wait to see what God's going to do in and through your life. Whose lives is he going to impact because you showed up stretched, toned, and ready for action? I hope that you've enjoyed tonight as much as I've enjoyed sharing with you. Apologies for the background sounds. My family are just having an awesome time, even though I'm locked in a relatively private space. It's not that private. Can't wait to see you next week, Tuesday. Have a great week. Stretch, stretch, stretch. See you next time, everyone. Bye.